PauseAI is called PauseAI because it was founded by a bunch of, at their heart, techno-optimists, right? Like, we want all the benefits from AI, but we can't get all the benefits from AI if we're dead, right? In the US, 70% of people support an AI pause. 87% of British people would back a law requiring AI developers to prove their systems are safe before release. I mean, so we have the public on our side, basically. Yeah, some altman tweeted out, like, I think, Eliezer, you should win a Nobel Prize. He's done more than anyone to accelerate AI, which I think maybe was a personal attack, but definitely like a strong grain of truth in there. In the face of superintelligence and in the face of extinction, we are all in the same boat. Like, I don't get, if you're left wing or right wing, you're American, you're Chinese, all of our fates are currently bound together. Should we rush into this as fast as possible? Should we make these decisions as quickly as we can?
Welcome everyone to Audio Tokens episode 17. I have Jonathan with me today. Jonathan is head of EA Stockholm and also head of PauseAI Sweden. And I think that the latter conversation is the one we're going to focus the most on today. Welcome to the pod, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Lucas. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I think we're going to get into PauseAI, but maybe take a step back first and talk about the AI safety movement, its origins. The AI safety movement is pretty old. You got into it quite a while back. Do you want to tell the origin story of the movement as a whole? Like, who were the key players early on, and maybe what, when we say AI safety, what do we mean? Is it Hollywood writers are losing their jobs, or is it more like X-risk related?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually going to start with just the last question you had there about what it is that we're concerned about. Primarily I'm concerned about misaligned superintelligence and the risk of extinction. I'm also very concerned about misaligned AI causing S risks, so, risks of truly astronomical suffering. I'm concerned.
So what does S risk stand for?
So suffering risk.
What is that like? How does that compare to X-risk?
Well, it's scenarios in which, if you imagine X-risk is where we're all dead, and S-risk is scenarios in which we wish we were dead.
Okay. So even worse.
Even worse, yes.
Okay.
I'm concerned about AI misuse, especially in aiding the creation of biological weapons, making that easier for people to do. I'm concerned about that in the attempt of one superpower to prevent another superpower from building superintelligence, that a war, including a nuclear war, could break out, between the US and China or Russia. I'm worried about mass unemployment, massive inequality, and the radical politics and political instability that may result from that. I'm also worried about, gradual disempowerment and what's known as the intelligence curse, the prospect that most humans could become economically useless and lose their leverage, that states would no longer have the same incentives to invest in their citizens. I'm concerned about what Roman Yampolsky calls ikigai risk, where ikigai means, the thing that you're good at, the world needs, and you can get paid for, and that you're passionate about. That in a world where we're superfluous, the people, broad swaths of the population, will lose a sense of purpose, of usefulness, of meaning. I'm concerned about the loss of consensus reality through AI-generated video and photos and text. I'm also concerned about the potential for digital sentience and us inadvertently causing a moral atrocity by enslaving huge numbers of AI and inflicting suffering upon them. And I'm concerned about automated warfare and those types of arms races. And I'm concerned about AI-enabled coups and how that could enable a small group of people to take over, say, the US or China, and from there on use that advantage to take over the world. There was a recent 80,000 Hours podcast detailing this. I'm concerned about AI-enabled totalitarianism, and that's just to mention some of the risks, right? The list goes on. So there's many reasons to be concerned about AI, right?
Yeah, that's. I was expecting maybe a shorter list, but that's okay. There's plenty to be worried about. Okay, so given there's these like I don't know how long this list was, but at least more than 10. Is there particular ones that you are like more concerned about, or like what are your like top two maybe or something?
Well, I'm most concerned about extinction and S risk, the ones I mentioned at the beginning. Those seem like the ones that could cause the greatest, the worst features, basically.
Yeah, and obviously, like, yes, they are like almost per definition the worst ones, but they are also maybe the less likely ones. Like, for example, the risk you mentioned where like humans become economically not productive. I feel that one is almost inevitable, but like the X risk one is maybe not inevitable. But yeah, it's hard to balance like one where the downside is basically infinite,
Right.
and one where like
Yeah.
the downside isn't infinite. So yeah, that calculus is pretty hard to.
I mean, PauseAI is a
do.
coalition of actors and interests, right? And people have different beliefs about what's likely about the future and how bad those are to you. And yeah, I mean, I'm here to represent PauseAI. Not entirely. I will also be talking, from my own perspective and my own opinions. But yeah. I mean, inevitably, you do, coalition building. You're not going to get this through with just less wrong rationalists, right?
Yeah, okay, makes sense. Yeah, let's go there. So PauseAI, like you can probably tell from the name, you want to pause AI. But yeah, maybe you can give a better example or a better description of what it is.
Well, I mean, it's in the name, right? We want to pause AI. And probably the way that we go about doing that is through an AI safety summit, like the ones that we've seen. But the problems with those is that the result has never been something legally binding. And in order to truly pause AI, we will need the involvement of both the US and China, crucially, right? And it needs to be impervious to vetoes as well. And it needs to be really fast. I mean, normal treaty-making processes, they often take years, and we might not have that time, right? Like AI 2027.
Yeah, that's for reference. AI 2027 is a famous scenario some people recently wrote where AI might take over within 2 years from now. So yeah, we don't have time. That's that's for sure. Maybe the usual time.
The proposition to pause AI doesn't necessarily hinge on us having 2 years, right? Like if this happens in 10 years, things will still be bad, right? So,
yeah. But just to back up, you said like the previous ones, the previous AI summits hasn't been legally binding. Yeah, what have been the previous ones and what came out of them, basically?
Well, so there's a bit of an evolution. The first one was the AI Safety Summit in Bletchley Park in London in October 2023. And then we got the Bletchley Declaration, where I think most crucially, the US, the UK, and China, and a bunch of other countries, they formally recognize that there is risks relating to loss of control, misalignment of incredibly powerful advanced AI systems. And then, the next ones were, well, the next one was in Seoul in South Korea in May 2024. And that one was shorter, it was mostly online. There was not as many countries participating. And then the next one was in Paris in February 2025, right? And those ones were, if you compare them with the first ones, they were less safety focused, especially the Paris one. I mean, the Paris one was a complete failure, right?
Summit,
like, yeah,
right?
It was the action summit. It had been turned into, Macron raised 109 billion euros for French AI industry there. I mean, it was basically, it said everywhere, we're back in the race, right? Like, it was no longer an AI safety summit for the most part.
It's like having oil drilling companies taking over a eco conference.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it was a complete farce from the perspective of AI safety.
Yeah.
Okay,
but like you said, the outcomes were not legally binding. So what were the outcomes, and were there outcomes that were not legally binding, and that was the problem, or was there no outcomes of the previous ones?
Well, in terms of like the formal, that they had a statement at the end, which basically, especially the Paris one, kind of repeated platitudes. There's nothing legally binding in there. It's just saying AI has these possibilities and these downsides, and yeah, I think it was more
Okay.
a forum for. Well, I mean, you had the J.D. Vance speech there where he was basically, US is going full jingoistic, like accelerationists. You're not gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not gonna keep us back.
Yeah. Okay. So and what would like ideal outcome be? Like how if you can design the outcome of the next one
Right.
to as you would want it, how would you design it?
Great question. So yeah, the most important countries are involved. Not only the US and China, but the other powers. I mean, France and India and Canada and so on. So if we were to pause AI, we'd want to set up an international AI safety agency. So similar to the International Atomic Energy Agency. And they would then be responsible for granting approval for deployments. So they would also do like red teaming and model evaluations. And they would grant approval to new training runs above a certain size. And they would hold meetings to discuss the progress of AI safety research between, the various countries. And then, you'd only allow the training of general AI systems if their safety can be guaranteed, right? So, meanwhile, you're getting, currently there's about a 300-to-1 ratio of AI capabilities researchers to AI safety researchers. Ideally, you maybe even out that a little bit, right? Like maybe we can use all
A
those
little.
like machine learning PhDs to do alignment research while we pause AI. And then, you have to have some sort of international governance system to verify that there are not dangerous training runs taking place elsewhere. And there are lots of actually proposed ways that we, done in other industries, and like you can track GPUs. Okay, that one's specific to, but you can incentivize whistleblowers. You can do energy monitoring from, you can do data center inspections. That's obviously requires the consent of all the parties, but you can do semiconductor manufacturing facility inspections and AI developer inspections, chip location tracking and chip-based reporting. So the whole, as you know, the AI chip supply chain is incredibly centralized and like bottlenecked. So it's not actually that hard to pinpoint. You have ASML and NVIDIA and
Yeah.
TSMC.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, you would have an entire international treaty where model like OpenAI would have to go to them and say, "Hey, I want to train this next run. These are the details of what I'm proposing," and then they get a yes or no. And then also for deployment, like after the training run is done, they would have to go through some scrutiny, like some evals that this treaty has, and then before they can deploy it to the public. They have to like pass those tests basically, and then this treaty would also be in charge of like making sure that these like no other actor is doing this under the radar and stuff. That's basically the but that doesn't like so okay, so that sounds like more control AI rather than pause AI. Like when I hear pause AI, I think like your ultimate goal is just like 6 months pause letter-esque type of thing, and and then and then maybe another organization is responsible for other stuff. Maybe you can like, because I know there's like pause AI, there's like stop AI as well, there's control AI, there's a bunch of different ones. How are they different, and what are like what part of this whole picture are people focusing on the most from the different organizations?
So, during a pause, it's not that pause AI wants to do this with all AI. So, narrow AI and AI below a certain capabilities level, perfectly fine to use. Like we still want the benefits of AI. We just don't want to go extinct, right? And some of the other risks, right? So in that sense, yeah. So if you compare to control AI and stop AI, I think many of them are more So there's a AI safety researcher called Roman Yampolsky, who I referenced earlier, and he has a line of reasoning where he arrives at the conclusion that, like, in the creation of iteratively, recursively self-improving AI, there's no way to guarantee that it does not change its values, or so it's a long technical argument, but basically his conclusion is that his p-doom is like north of 99%. And in that case, maybe, so stop AI. They don't want AI at all, right? Like, for the indefinite future. PauseAI is called PauseAI because, it was founded by a bunch of, at their heart, techno-optimists, right? Like, we want all the benefits from AI, but we can't get all the benefits from AI if we're dead, right? So now the difference between PauseAI and control AI is whether you take a more top-down or bottom-up grassroots approach. So control AI, one of the things they've been doing, for example, is they've gotten almost 40 members of parliament in the UK, if I remember correctly, to sign on to create common knowledge. They've signed on that they believe that AI poses an existential risk to humanity. PauseAI is trying to do more grassroots. It's for the public. It's for everyone, really, right? Like, and the policymakers will obviously, the strategies are complementary. The policymakers will care more if they see that the demos, cares about this issue. So.
Okay. So yeah, because I know that you organize like protests and stuff to get visibility for the public. So control AI, they don't do that. They go to like the policymakers directly.
They do that too, but maybe they do that to, they're not trying to necessarily mobilize everyday people to be on the streets, right?
Right.
They're more sort of, they do encourage everyday citizens to email their representatives, for example. So
yeah, sure.
But so does PauseAI. So really, it's complementary strategies, I would say.
Yeah. So what is okay, you target getting the public aware of the risks. What is the like line of reasoning that, like, okay, if the public gets it, then we will pause AI, or like how can the public opinion lead to better AI safety outcomes?
Mm-hmm. Well, in democracies, if there's a sufficiently large will, often those people get their will through, right? Politicians want to be re-elected.
Do you think this is fast enough, though? Like, we have to wait for the next, like you said, AI 2027, like, then we have to wait for the next election.
Well, so I would say, in terms of where it is in people's importance of issues, it ranks pretty low at the moment. But if you look at the sympathy, or how much people agree with the kind of things that PauseAI proposes, it's actually, I don't know, I think it was surprising to me the first time I saw it, right? So I have some stats here in front of me. In the US, 70% of people support an AI pause.
70?
70,
0.
yeah.
It's 70.
Yes, 70. And broadly speaking,
Yeah,
it's very similar numbers across developed countries. In the UK, 74% of people believe the government should prevent superhuman AI from quickly being created. 87% of British people would back a law requiring AI developers to prove their systems are safe before release. So we have the public on our side, basically. Like,
right, but like 74%. What was that? 74%
believe the government should prevent superhuman AI from quickly being created. So slowing down.
Do 74% even like understand what that means? I mean, who did they poll to get this? Like,
so I think that one was YouGov. So it's a representative sample of the population.
Right. Yeah. I guess.
I'm sure not everyone fully understands, what exactly that means, and but. Yeah, it's a popular issue. It's just not particularly high salience at the moment.
Yeah, and you have been like in charge of organizing a bunch of these like protests. What response do you get from people when you do this?
From who would you say?
So people like pass by, or or maybe also pass by, but also maybe, I don't know, like reporters, or maybe do you get reactions from politicians? Well, yeah, what's the broad question?
Honestly, I've gotten curiosity and sympathy. A lot of people tell me, yeah, like this whole AI thing, I'm worried, I'm concerned about the direction this is headed in. Yeah, like, I mean,
And what do
so,
they reference then? Like, why are they? Is it like X risk, or is it loss of job?
well, I think it's many things. I mean, many people have a sort of just dispositional conservativeness when it comes to change. Um, and, you know, yeah, but many people, yeah, like, they've heard the headlines about AI risk and superintelligence and Jeffrey Hinton and Stuart Russell and all the other people warning about AI. But jobs, it's a variety of things that they're concerned about. But
And like, how do you set up like an effective protest? Like, what is there to consider? Like, does it matter where you go? Like, do you stand outside like the Swedish like the Swedish president's home, or something like that? Or what is how do you do it?
yeah, so the location, yeah, it should be somewhere relevant, somewhere symbolic, somewhere where a lot of people will see you, right? So in Stockholm, for example, we've done it outside the parliament. I guess you could do it outside of, I mean, Google and Meta have headquarters in Stockholm, so you could do it there. But the most important thing is just that there are journalists there, right? Like the number of people who will see you in real life is just a tiny fraction of all the people who will see you through media. Yeah.
So like, okay, and you do this in Sweden, and Sweden is pretty small country, and we don't have that many like AI labs here. So what is the, like, is there a point of doing it in Sweden? Like, if Sweden do the the thing that you want to do, like if they put the most perfect legislation, but only in Sweden, does that even matter for in like the big picture?
Well, so in terms of outcomes I want to see from Sweden, I suppose it has less to do with legislation or anything, Sweden pausing AI, right? It's more that I think that the specific leverage that Sweden has is that we have, or at least historically have had, this reputation of being a moral superpower. We led really successful vanguard work, I would say, on nuclear disarmament. We were really forcefully opposed to the Vietnam War on the world stage. We did really pioneering work on sort of international cooperation on climate change. We hosted the very first climate change summit here in Stockholm. We were also really instrumental in the fight against apartheid. So like Sweden has a lot of soft power. We have a lot of diplomatic power. We have our voice in the EU and, in the UN. So in terms of like, I'm born here. I grew up here. This is where I start, right? But if I had to pick some country of around 10 million people, Sweden's not a bad bet. Like we also have the Nobel Prize, and I think it'd be naive to assume that the Nobel committee, they weren't at all making a statement by elevating Jeffrey Hinton for physics, or like he's not. So. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's really important to work in DC and London, Beijing, Brussels, but Sweden can be part of part of leading a charge, like a chorus of voices that are calling for a solution to the suicide race, right?
Right. Yeah, we're punching above our
Yeah,
weight,
no, for sure. I
and maybe
mean, Nick
and
Bostrom, Max Tegmark, Anders Sandberg, Marcus Anderjung has started GovAI, right? Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. You mentioned Beijing there. Like, so one common maybe pushback on like pausing AI is like, okay, but China is not going to pause, so like we can't pause either. Yeah, what is your response to that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, so I was just reading an article out of the Center for Existential Risk in Cambridge. And it was called something like The AI Arms Race, Reality or Rhetoric. And it analyzed, pronouncements by top politicians and technologists in the US and China. And, the push for AGI and strategic, decisive dominance, winning the arms race, is something that comes way more from the US. And often the people who are pushing it,
more from the US rather than China.
yeah, like, I mean, you do see signs, you see some people who say it, but often they say it in a more toned down way. Like, that kind of rhetoric is, from what I can tell from this article, it's just not as pronounced. You know, there's many of the people who push it in the US stand to gain. You know, they're doing it in a way to decrease regulation, right? Accelerate. They often have interests. So this issue of China, like, yeah, I would not say that China would never pause, right? I don't know if you saw this Economist article called "Is Xi Jinping an AI Doomer?" And like,
I didn't know.
They provide a lot of evidence that like Xi Jinping takes this very seriously. I mean, you know, Xi Jinping does not want to lose control, and there are not that many things that he could lose control to. And one of them is superintelligence.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Like the Chinese government, they really want control, and like yeah, they have everything. Like they don't need to worry about like other countries. They're the biggest kid on the block around them. The US like probably not going to start a war if they, maybe Taiwan or whatever. But like yeah, if they build superintelligence, like that is not something that they can control. Like yeah, like up to a point, yes. Like people say, oh, but they build like surveillance AI and stuff like this. And yeah, those are like too narrow AIs. But like, yeah, when they build, they wouldn't want to build agentic AI that takes control from them. So maybe they would be super happy, like if the US paused, so they also can pause. So the only reason why they also need to build super intelligence is to protect themselves from what US is doing.
Yeah, I mean, they're currently behind in the race, right? So it may be more in their interest to strike a bargain with the US. And, you know, so people like Dario Amodei say he's walking, there's a fine, nice edge between if we go too slow, then China will win, and if we go too fast, then we might go extinct. And it's kind of said as if those two things are just like equally bad, right? Like, don't get me wrong. Insofar as we get, you know, an aligned AI, I would want a Western country to do it. But we have to consider the hypothetical here, given the stakes. Like, how bad would it, hypothetically, be if China got there first? Right? Like, is it, do we get 80% of the value? Do we get 30% of the value? How similar in terms of values is the West to China compared to misaligned AI? Like, when we're talking about the lives of, I mean, not only 8 billion people, but like all future generations, then maybe striking a bargain, like, you know, it might be that it's like, oh, okay, you get this part of the universe, like you get this part of the universe, like maybe that's better than risking everything. You know, it's not obvious to me that like, yeah, I think you see what I mean.
Yeah, but you're talking about the upside here, like you're talking about it in terms of like, okay, what if China does it and they like the downside would be that only China get the upside, but I guess there's also the downside that China does it and it takes control over China, and then it takes control over the rest of the world. But yeah, the solution to that is to not push China to do it, basically. So yeah, makes sense. Yeah, and in terms of like, so I guess some people say like the cost of pausing is that China will catch up and they will win and spread their like dictatorial ways of being to the rest of the world. But there's like also other costs of pausing AI. Like every day, like probably I think you and me both agree that if we build superintelligence and it goes well, then cancer is a thing of the past. Like there's so much suffering that is going to be solved. And like every day we pause AI, that's a day where we didn't get those benefits, and that's a lot of suffering. A lot of people are dying at the moment for things that AI could solve, basically. So how do you like balance that, like pausing 6 months is like 6 extra months of not having the cure for cancer.
Yeah. And you're talking to someone who comes from a very techno-optimist background. Like, the reason I became interested in this in the first place was because I wanted super intelligence, right? And all the benefits that could bring. But in this situation, we have to do an expected utility or sort of expected costs analysis, right? And what's at stake is all of our lives, right? And all the future generations. And I do also think that future generations should matter. So if the thing that you are concerned about is sort of, if you zoom out on a sort of civilizational level, do we as a civilization make the trajectory, do we make our future go well or not? There's this famous paper by Nick Bostrom from the early 2000s called Astronomical Waste. And he just makes the argument that, so like every delay in, solving all these problems and like getting out there into space and like making the universe a nice place is a real loss, an opportunity cost. But it's massively swamped by the probability that we even get there in the first place. So like, if you increase the risk by 1%, then that's like 1% of all the future lives, in expected utility terms. Whereas, 6 months is nothing compared to the lifespan. So,
Right.
Yeah.
But shouldn't we care more about, like, should people be like accounted for equally? Like, shouldn't the next 6 months, like the people around us here, like, shouldn't we act more in favor of them rather than some distant human that has not been born yet and will not be born for 1,000 years?
Well, I mean, I definitely agree that is the intuitively correct answer. But I think long-termism has surprisingly good arguments behind it, right? Like, so I just want to say that long-termism is not a sort of prerequisite for wanting to pause AI, right? Like, you can just care about wanting to not have all the currently 8 billion people living not die. But if we do go down that rabbit hole, so if I drop a bottle and it breaks in the forest, and there's a bunch of shards around there, like, should I pick them up? Knowing, does it matter whether that I know that no one will walk there for the next 5 years or 2,000 years? Right? It seems like it doesn't really. You should pick up the glass. Like, it doesn't really matter that someone will cut themselves in 2,000 years. The pain will be the same. And like, if you start doing discounting, you quickly run into really absurd conclusions that like one person now matters more than like 40 trillion people in like X number of years. Like, So, but I should say, right, that I think that we can go down safer routes when it comes to AI. So I don't know if you saw, but Joshua Bengio, the like most cited AI researcher, who's now a very prominent AI safety advocate, he recently started this, is it company or nonprofit called Law Zero, where they're trying to develop like non-agentic scientists AIs, more like AlphaFold or in that kind of vein, that can hopefully get a lot of the benefits in terms of medical research and maybe material science and other things without running the risk of developing agentic AI systems that threaten our existence.
What is meant by agentic, and like how do you make sure they are not agentic?
I'm not sure, actually. I have to admit, I haven't looked into the specifics of what the proposal is.
Yeah, but I actually thought about this morning, so that's why I got curious. It's very fascinating, like, because you could say like, okay, so this is my thought process this morning, like AlphaFold, for example. It's just it feels like a very narrow AI. It can just like input like a string and then output some classification. I mean, I know it's more complicated than that. And like, yeah, that's not agentic, surely. But like an LLM is also just you input some text and you output like a classification of which word is most likely as the continuation. That doesn't sound that agentic, but like you could steer them in ways so that they become agentic anyway. So for example, I ran the thought experiment of like, could a binary classifier, a classifier that like predicts, is this a cat or not? You give it an image, is it a cat or not? And like, surely you couldn't use that as an agentic AI, right? But like, okay, but the system could actually predict or like could actually make actions based on the sequence of ones and zero it outputs when it makes the predictions for the cat. I guess there has to be like some kind of complexity in the model so it can have like a representation of the desired state or something like that. But yeah, that's a tangent. But I guess they do. So it's a hard problem. So
Yeah, no,
I will
yeah.
definitely look into that.
I'm just glad that people like Joshua Bengio are on it. But presumably you would need a global regulatory framework to, while you're developing those, to also make sure that people are not developing the dangerous agentic AIs.
Yeah,
so,
but it's my point here was that it's very hard to assess if they are agentic or not, I guess.
Right.
Because even a cat classifier could be if you wire it.
Which is why we need
right
more
way.
AI safety research. We need to like 300 to 1 ratio needs to be closed.
Yeah. And this leads us into one of the questions that we've been discussing, you and me, in the past, and it's about like evals. So surely it would be great to have an eval to test whether a system is agentic or not. So that's an example, I think, of a safety eval that is like it is a good safety eval and hard to. But then you have other like evals where you test whether a model is capable of doing something that is dangerous. But everything that is like testing if it's capable is also potentially something that could be used to further capabilities. So yeah, I would be curious to know like what is your opinion on doing evals for safety and yeah, how should one think about doing if one want to do like safety evals? What should one think about?
Yeah. So I guess the point of an eval or a benchmark is to diagnose behaviors and dispositions in AI systems to see if you're on the right path. And if you're diagnosing, like, so AI developers are not intentionally trying to develop systems that perform dangerous or bad behavior, right? So in that sense, I don't think it's all bad to develop evaluations for dangerous behavior. I think that's great. You know, the kind of thing that you're doing and Palisade research and Apollo research, like really great stuff. What I'm more skeptical of is just generic capabilities evals because, you know, those benchmarks allow capabilities researchers to see if they're on the right track and, you know, improve the performance of their systems. So
yeah, but wouldn't the treaty you want to put together, wouldn't that one need evals like that as well?
yes, but then in that case we're actually making sure that no one is using those, like people are not developing that, you know, you are not allowed and cannot do training runs that, so it's a you know, you're compensating.
Basically, they are kept inside this treaty that is trusted to only use them for safety purposes.
Yeah.
Okay. So the closest thing to a pause we've gotten, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is like this 6 months letter that Max Tegmark and others signed for, I think it was like 1.5 years ago or something, or 1 year ago. What was the outcome? Like maybe you can start. Like what was that letter? And what was the outcome of it? Was it a success? What was the purpose of it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it was a letter organized by the Future of Life Institute in March of 2023, if my memory doesn't fail me. And basically it proposed a 6 months pause on training runs of systems smarter than GPT-4. And it was signed by people like Elon Musk, Yuval Noah Harari, Steve Wozniak, a bunch of other big names, and they got a lot of media attention, right? And so, according to Scott Alexander of Slate Codex and Astral Codex 10 fame, the 6-month pause letter was basically, behind the scenes, it was a really watered down compromise between a bunch of different actors and interests. But the main
What
point,
were those interests, like AI labs, and or
well,
who were
they just couldn't agree on what the specific ask was, or
yeah.
like.
But who were the actors?
Um,
You say the compromise between who?
yeah, so I think people more safety concerned and people more capabilities. How pessimistic and optimistic people were, and but
Mm.
I'm not entirely sure what the behind the scenes conflict was, but outwardly it was 6 months pause, and I think it's best to think of it as a common rallying point. It created common knowledge, so previously it was a bit hush hush, like taking AI risk seriously was like you were running a reputational risk. So it was a way of creating common knowledge that credible people are taking this risk seriously. Um, um, but in my view, it was indirectly a huge success. So they didn't get the 6 months pause through. And anyway, like PauseAI is not about getting like a 6-month pause there and then resume. I mean, it's definitely after 6 months, right? It's like conditional on that you can prove that AI systems are safe. Um, um, and ideally, it's
But
not.
this was a success anyway. You think, like, even if it's like
Well, yeah.
Pause AI would want more than 6 months and then continue, but like, yeah, it's better than nothing. And even if they
Yeah.
didn't get it, like the rallying part
Well, so
was a
I
success.
think it massively moved the Overton window towards AI safety. And I don't think it was a coincidence that 2 months later, the Center for AI Safety released the statement on existential risk, which basically said AI systems, should be treated on par with pandemics and nuclear war in terms of global priorities. I'm paraphrasing, but and I believe that they were inspired by that. And if we look at what happened following that, I mean, later in the year, we got the Bletchley Park summit, the first AI safety, where, the US and China are agreed that AI systems pose existential risks. And then we got the UK AI Safety Institute, but you got the US AI Safety Institute. I mean, later we also got in Japan, China, EU, France, Canada, Singapore, Australia, South Korea, Poland, Argentina. And we got the Biden executive order on AI. So, like, it's hard to say that it was not a success. Yeah, even if that specific proposal didn't get implemented.
I see. Yeah, and I feel like you said March 2023. Yeah, I feel like shortly after that, like you said, you listed all of these things that were positive for the direction of AI safety. But lately, it's been like you mentioned before with the Paris summit being called AI what was it called?
The
No,
Action Summit, yeah.
the Action Summit. Yeah, blanked on the name. Sorry.
Mm.
Yeah, it feels like the momentum has kind of died off. And I also noticed like a lot of people that previously, like they're rebranding AI safety to AI security. I think the UK AI Safety Institute rebranded to AI Security Institute. And I see more and more people saying that they care about AI security rather than AI safety. And this feels like a branding to like get away from the past of AI safety or something. Has there been like a reputational hit to the movement of AI safety, or what's happening there?
Yeah, no, definitely there has been. And I think the foremost cause of that was the OpenAI board drama in late 2023. So it got interpreted as a sort of a coup by the AI safety people, Tasha McCauley and Helen Toner. Um, while later it turned out, it wasn't actually very much about AI safety, but they didn't have a public, they didn't take their message to the public. So you got a huge amount of backlash from, people in Silicon Valley. I mean, EAC, effective accelerationism, got a really big boost by that, I think. And the narrative went against AI safety and EA, and it really polarized. And I think, yeah, those interests really started organizing, and like they managed to get SB 1047, the California ballot proposition, shut down. I think another really important thing is that AI safety, what with the Biden administration, it got somewhat left coded, like regulationist, safetyist, and the Trump administration, in its sort of deregulatory nature, pushed back against that. And so they massively scaled back the US AI Safety Institute. They just renamed it. They kind of removed the loss of control stuff. Yeah, and then I think another aspect of it is that when ChatGPT came out, and then there was this media flurry, and GPT-4 came out, and there was the 2 open letters. People, especially people who had not been following AI, but also people who had been following AI, it was a huge surprise, and there was a lot of fear and concern whether we might get really negative outcomes quite soon. And then, honestly, things have gone mostly okay. Like, there have been no really major blow-ups. Obviously, there have been lots of worrying signs for those people who are paying attention. But, they got a lot of attention, and then people moved on. And then, the EACs obviously have gotten a lot of wind in their sails because of that. So I think the whole security rebranding just has to do with conservative winds blowing,
But it also feels weird that, like, in a time where 70% of the public, or whatever you said before, want to allow governments to stop the development of super intelligence, that this is the time where the reputation tanks. Like, why wouldn't it be the opposite? Like, I feel like surely the public is more pro this than ever. But maybe the OpenAI, was it only the OpenAI drama thing that resulted in this reputation hit, or are there other things as well?
Well, those are the things that come to my mind as the most significant
Yeah.
ones. Do you
Yeah.
do you have any sort of hypotheses on this?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, one hypothesis I think is that OpenAI, or AI safety, is so tightly coupled with like the EA community, and the EA community has also kind of gotten a hit. I guess, like, from Sam Bankman-Fried.
But that was 1 year
Um,
before, so you would have expected that they wouldn't have the initial success in the first place, right?
that is true. That is true. Maybe they just had like the initial success of like the 6 months pause letter and all of that, and that like overshadowed that. But now, like, that has blown past, and then you have, I think you're right, in like the OpenAI drama, and then couple that, people remember, okay, Sam Bankman-Fried was like this horrible person, and also the biggest supporter of AI safety. That means AI safety must be bad, or something along those lines. I don't know. But also, I don't know if that makes sense, because Sam Bankman-Fried, I guess most people forgot about him by now.
Right. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so
Well,
I don't
other
know
than
if that.
until this new Netflix series comes, or movie comes
Oh
out about,
no,
yeah,
I didn't
The
know about this.
Altruists, it's called. So
Oh wait, okay, like,
yeah, it's about
educate me.
Caroline
What?
Ellison and SBF. It's coming out, I think, later this year or something.
Oh, interesting. How do you know what it's going to be about? Like,
No,
the entire, like,
I don't know
are
much
you
about it. The only thing I've seen on Twitter about it is that people are like, "Oh my God, they're too hot." Like, I don't know. Oh,
so okay, interesting. And as someone who's, like, you've been very involved in EA, and head of EA Stockholm, and part of organizing this, you must have felt this, like, reputation hit. Are you worried now with the Netflix series coming out that it will be even worse? Or yeah, how has it been being in this position, and while the reputation of EA kind of went down?
yeah. I mean, it was tough. It was right after, I would say, the EA movement had its big break. We were flying high before that. There was a ton of money being pumped in, and Will McCaskill had just come out with What We Owe the Future, and was going on. Trevor Noah, and EA was getting glowing reviews in The Economist and New York Times and all that sort of things. I don't believe that one person's mistake means that the principles are invalidated. But a lot of people, for strategic reasons, disengaged or didn't want to be labeled as an EA because of the association with SPF. But inevitably in any social movement, there will be scandals, right? I think EA has been very self-flagellating, or maybe that's a little bit too not value neutral enough. But like, okay, if you compare to Trump, right, scandals just roll off of him, while EA has been obsessed internally about this one scandal that happened several years ago, and only now is it sort of regaining its confidence and strength and growing once again. And
Yeah, it's interesting. Like for me personally, I kind of had the opposite. Like I don't know why, but like as the reputation went down and people started to like distance themselves from it, I got more and more confident in being of my like part of the community. Like I was never a big part of it before. Like I never engaged in any meetings or anything like that. But then maybe it was because like it wasn't cool anymore to be EA, so it was only the really pure ones that really stuck around, and then I started to actually enjoy the community more. I like never engaged at all
is
before
it just
SPF.
counter signaling all the way down?
Probably, but yeah. So yeah, I'm glad it's coming back to some extent. But like one thing I do actually like, it makes sense. Unfortunately, like even though like I agree with you, like the principles of the day, I agree with them. Most of them at least. I'm not ready to say that I've read all of them and I agree with all of them, but like yeah, like in general I agree with them. But like it also makes sense that you would get like an overrepresentation of people like people like Sam Bankman-Fried, like and for the audience, the basic what happened was like he thought he was like, this is my interpretation at least, like he thought that he could do more good with the money, so he made a bunch of illegal stuff so that he could get money temporarily, which could duplicate, and then he could do more good. So he did illegal stuff because he thought he was like better than the law and could do more good than if he followed the law. And people like that are like, surely they're going to be drawn to EA, because like yeah, EA is like the philosophy that I don't know if allows it, but like kind of goes a bit in that direction. And yeah, how do you think about that? Like you've been much more involved than me in terms of like organizing the community. How is this something you think about when in your like role as organizing events and or the community?
So I think I want to start with just somewhat questioning the conclusion that the reason SPF did what he did was sort of a mad gamble to get more money. I think if you look closely, actually, at the behind the scenes, it just seemed like it was out of incompetence and not paying enough attention and sort of, like not caring enough about, following the rules and making sure the paperwork.
Like caring in the sense of I'm lazy, or like I don't like
Well,
bureaucracy, so I'm going to not care.
apparently, yeah, behind the scenes, I mean, it was very much a sort of early startup vibe in a multi-billion-dollar company, where. So, I recommend listening to Will McCaskill went on Spencer Greenberg Clearer Thinking podcast, and you could say Will McCaskill is obviously biased, but I think he's actually being very honest about his role and analyzing what went wrong. And the details of specifically what went wrong there, I think, do not entirely corroborate this view of Sam Bankman-Fried being entirely altruistically motivated and just sort of gambling, degenerate gambling, right, on
Mm.
other people's money. But I think, we also have to look at base rates of people who justify bad behavior with pro-social reasons in other movements. Like, I'm just not convinced that it's higher in EA. I mean, I'm not saying it isn't, but it doesn't seem obvious to me. I see, like I see very ethically scrupulous people who are not willing to you know, do bad things for the greater good. But I mean, you can argue, like Emil Torres has, that there are dangers in ideologies that promise basically infinite value, because people can justify basically anything. And, we see this with religions, with heaven, right? And we saw it with, communism and sort of the communist utopia, the Soviet utopia. So it is something to look out for, but yeah.
Oh, that's great. Like, yeah, I haven't actually looked into it that much. I think I just like assume the public perception, or I don't even know if this is the public perception. Maybe it's just like this made sense in my mind, or something like that. But that's great. That's why I do this podcast. Now I learned something new, and I can update on it. I also want to chat with you about like the origins of the AI safety community. I think that's very interesting. Something we chatted about like the first time we ever met. And you talked about like how like we kind of shot ourselves in the foot while trying to do good and stuff like this. Maybe you can like tell the story of how everything got started, and the implications of that.
So, actually concern about AI and AI risk goes back to 1863. Samuel Butler, sort of. But, it sort of started with like the idea that we might get super intelligent machines. Goes back to Alan Turing and John von Neumann in the 40s and 50s. But, really the AI safety movement has its origins, you could say, in the extropian mailing list, which was basically, so extropianism was this sort of libertarian transhumanist ideology during the 1990s. And the extropian mailing list had a lot of people who, so Nick Bostrom was there, Eliezer Yudkowsky was there, David Pierce, for those who know who that is, was there, Anders Sandberg. And it was this like sort of very open space where people discussed transhumanist and sort of singularitarian ideas. And singularitarianism has its origin in those quarters. But the person who really kicked this off is Eliezer Yudkowsky around the late 90s and early 2000s. And, he started writing about the dangers of self-improving AI publicly. But, it seemed absurd to most people at the time. But
late 90s.
Well, so early 2000s is initially he was like very pro, like bring on the singularity as soon as possible. But then he realized all the risks involved, right? So then during the early 2000s was really when a lot of that thinking got fleshed out, primarily by Eliezer Yudkowsky, and then he had other people who jumped like Omohundro and Nick Bostrom, and the modern day AI landscape is very bound up with that early era. So. And this is where, you mentioned the whole shooting yourself in the foot thing, where, well, we get into... So there's a number of ways in which AI safety and the AI safety people have kind of caused the AI capabilities, the AI acceleration. So, for example, it's very easy to criticize Eliezer now, sort of with now that the results are in, and it's very easy to have hindsight bias. Much harder to know if you were him how you should have acted. But he introduced Shane Legg, who's one of the founders of Google DeepMind, to the idea of superintelligence. And then he introduced Shane Legg and Demis Hassabis to Peter Thiel at one of the parties for the Singularity Institute. And Peter,
at the time, they weren't yet founders of DeepMind.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is early mid 2000s. Yeah. And Peter Thiel was one of the like first funders of OpenAI. I mean, sorry, DeepMind, as well as Jan Tallinn, the founder of Skype, another sort of AI safety concerned person. Yeah, so Google DeepMind got started arguably accelerating. You know, also, yeah, like a number of people at OpenAI got inspired. So Demis Hassabis and Nick Bostrom seem to have been really instrumental influences on Elon Musk and also Sam Altman. And I think some of the people who founded OpenAI met at this conference, the Future of Life Institute, organized in Puerto Rico in 2015. And then,
Sorry. Just so the timeline here is like DeepMind got funded because Eliezer introduced Demis and Shane Legg to Peter Thiel. And then when did Google buy DeepMind? Was this before
that
this
was
conference?
In 2010, I believe.
2010. Okay,
yeah.
So this already happened.
12,
so Google,
something around there.
One of the biggest tech companies, had basically the only AGI lab on Earth at that time. And then they, like Elon Musk, and now we're at this conference where all of the people that like care about AIs or like super intelligence are. And is this where like the idea of OpenAI started, or?
Well,
sorry, continue your story.
So OpenAI seems to, Elon Musk was in a spat with Larry Page, one of the founders of Google. Basically, Larry Page was advocating for the idea of humans being a biological bootloader. Like, it's okay if the AIs make us go extinct. They'll be our mind children. Elon Musk was apparently like, I fucking like humanity, dude. And he thought that it would be best if Google did not create superintelligence. And so
because Larry was in charge and he was irresponsible.
Exactly.
He didn't prioritize humanity.
Yeah, so he was the CEO of Google, right? But like Google DeepMind was still somewhat separate, and but before that, there was this kind of spirit of cooperation. Like all the AI safety people were kind of on the same page. Like, okay, if we're gonna build AI, it's best if it's one system. There's no race dynamic. There's no competition here. Like, we can take our time and do this properly. And this is the way in which like the AI and the AI safety community has been quite cozy with each other, because the AI safety people, because they believed that they could not take their pitch to the public or to policymakers, politicians, people would just not take them seriously. They believed that the only way they were going to do this was by playing the inside game, basically. And so,
And what does that mean?
Well, it means that being having a voice in these companies, like being the person in the room to make sure that everything's done safely, basically. And this is a bit of the dynamic that has happened over and over again. So, okay, Google DeepMind was started. OpenAI was like, okay, but we're going to do it safe, right? Yeah. And then, in 2020, Anthropic was like, okay, we had enough with OpenAI. We're going to do it safely this time, right? And then, like, each time you accelerate, Elon Musk left OpenAI, and then he started xAI, right? And then Ilya Sutskever left OpenAI, and he started Safe Superintelligence. And like Mira Murati left OpenAI, and she's got her own. I don't even know what they're called, but like, it just keeps happening over and over again that people, they're trying to do it like, okay, but this time we're going to do it safe, and then they end up accelerating the race.
And why is it like why is it bad to accelerate the race? Why is it bad to have more actors?
I guess the more actors okay, so ideally you have one actor, right? And then they have way more slack in the system, right? They can take their time. Two, I guess, is the least bad of the non-one options. And then for each one, you probably don't accelerate, like, the difference between there being 10 players and 11 players, it probably doesn't accelerate very much. But if you go from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, there'll be more they'll explore more low-hanging fruit. And although you could, of course, argue that by dividing it up, there's like less capital for each company and the researchers get divided up. So actually in that way, it slows down progress. But yeah.
Yeah, and I also feel like the first one, if you didn't take the first step and like, okay, we don't trust DeepMind to do this, so we're going to do it correctly with OpenAI. Like now, a couple years later, like it actually feels like maybe DeepMind is the best one here,
Right.
or like the most safe one. I get the sense that like if you really don't want AI to take over, which I think is pretty bad, then like the philosophy of DeepMind feels much more like, obviously they are making Gemini and all of this, but I get the sense that they are almost like forced into making Gemini. Like if Google DeepMind decides, they are doing like AlphaFold and like stuff like this that isn't really AGI. They are making like powerful AI, but not AGI in a sense. And they are forced into the race because they're like, all their investors will ask, why are you not like beating OpenAI when you have all the resources and you are like worked on it for the longest time. So they are like forced into the race by OpenAI, who would be the person that who would be who would be the company that is supposedly was going to make it more safe. And then other companies like Anthropic and then Safe Ilias company, like just adding to the to the race. It doesn't really make sense that we could have had, like, if we didn't do this, like if the AI safety community didn't do this, we could have had just DeepMind and their like AlphaFolds and nothing else.
Yeah.
And it would have been glorious.
And then Elon Musk blew that up.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about an Eliezer Yudkowsky tweet where he basically says like, Elon Musk wanted to make it about which monkey would get the poison banana. He blew that up. That's the net result of his life. The end. Like nothing that he will ever do will ever make up for the fact that he initiated an arms race between AGI companies so that they cut corners on safety, and then we very likely like go extinct because of that. So, yeah.
How does he, like, has he acknowledged his own role in this? Like, does he, like, the fact that he was part of creating DeepMind, or like some part of it, has he acknowledged that? Does he regret it, or?
So yeah, he has acknowledged it in the sense that he said like, oh, I did not foresee that being the consequences of my actions. I don't think he's sort of been like, done a public apology or anything like that. I mean, I do remember, some Altman tweeted out like, I think Eliezer, I'm paraphrasing here, but Eliezer, you should win a Nobel Prize. He's done more than anyone to accelerate AI, and like, which I think maybe was a lot just sort of a dig or a personal attack, but definitely like a strong grain of truth in there. Yeah, but I mean, no, so. Yeah, there's the whole hindsight is 2020 thing, but I do think it's important for us to draw the causal chain so that we can draw lessons for the future about what kind of things to avoid. Yeah.
So it's interesting because, like, okay, looking back, it was like a bad move to say, okay, I'm going to do it safer. But like, given our current situation now, maybe what Ilya is doing, like leaving OpenAI and starting a new one that is supposedly the safe one, like the fifth one maybe isn't that bad. And then also like if you go to OpenAI and you are like a bunch of OpenAI employees are leaving because they like don't think OpenAI is safe or like working for safety anymore. But like surely it's space is better to have some safety engineers in there. Same with Anthropic. Like if you want to make good contributions to AI safety now, isn't working at one of these companies that are yeah, isn't it like, but it feels like that's the best way, but it's kind of doing the same thing as we did in the past, which we have concluded here was probably not for the better. Yeah, how would you think about that? Like, should one like go to OpenAI and work on safety within OpenAI, or is this just like repeating history again?
So yeah, I'm not sure, honestly. Certainly, I think the fact that there's so many safety researchers that left OpenAI. I mean, Jan Leike, Richard No, Miles Brundage, William Saunders, Daniel Coca-Tyler, the list goes on, right? That says something. And they all thought, that was the best choice, and they're smart people who, and so I update based on that. I mean, the reasons they gave included that they weren't able to do good work at OpenAI, that they had lost faith in OpenAI, that they couldn't stand working for a company that they saw as sort of going off the rails and acting recklessly. And that by leaving the organization, they were making a statement that would cause media coverage and direct criticism towards OpenAI. But so I'm sure they thought about it. But from my perspective, yeah, I agree. It does seem a little bit unstrategic. Or like if you really do believe that OpenAI is likely to be, yeah, one if not the key player at the sort of end game, then I suppose you would want to be the person in the room. But it depends on what your counterfactual is, right? Like if you can go work at Anthropic instead, then yeah. But
Yeah.
I have no easy answers when it comes to this.
Yeah. So it feels like that's maybe like a fault of OpenAI, that they are set up in a way that the people can't use their voice. Like the only reason why you would do this is because you need someone, you want to be in the room to like take part of the decisions and make the decision that is the best for safety. But like if you're not given a voice, then there's no point of you being there, basically.
Yeah.
And
Well,
maybe
I mean, as
sorry.
you maybe know, like Daniel Coca-Tylo made it visible to the rest of the world that OpenAI had these NDAs where if you criticize OpenAI after you left the company, you would lose all of your stocks. And like Daniel Coca-Tylo surrendered 80% of his wealth in order to be able to criticize OpenAI. And like after that, they removed that, and Sam said, "Oh, I had no idea," but like he signed under this, so they were literally trying to stop safety people. Like it's not very inspiring, or it's not very confidence building for your company to navigate the creation of superintelligence if safety researchers are not allowed to criticize the company. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. A lot of these people that are leaving, not all of them, but like I think John Leike is Anthropic now. Is that right? Or did he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of them went to Anthropic after that. Do you feel like working at Anthropic is like you're still in one of the companies that are contributing to the race, right? And the race is pretty bad. But like, yeah, if you're, is that not good? Like, because it feels like we haven't really seen the same in Anthropic. Maybe they have more of a say when they get into the room, or what's your sense of that?
Well, I think I just want to start with saying I follow the logic of like there is a certain sense of like, okay, but we're gonna do it safely, like all things equal, insofar as there has to be a company that initiates an intelligence explosion without any pause. I really hope that doesn't happen, but I would hope that it would be Anthropic. But Anthropic are playing by the rules of the game, and they're stuck, competing against the others. And so you see they start with noble intentions, and slowly but surely, oh, we're not going to accelerate capabilities, and then they do. And then, we're not going to work with military contractors, and then they do. I mean, Yeah, like I think my main criticism of Anthropic is that while from the game theory, race dynamic perspective, you can't take too many actions that set you back, that like slow you down, because then you won't have a shot. But they can publicly call for much more cooperation with like regulation on themselves, because then it will affect all players equally. They can call, Dario Amodei could be saying way more like, guys, this this is a potentially omni-lethal, omnicidal technology, and we need to cooperate more with each other and maybe with China. Like Dario Amodei and Sam Altman and Demis Hassabis, they all know each other going back a long time. Like they, they could present a public face when it comes to this. I mean, I watched the interview you did with Esben Kran, and I completely agree with his criticism that just Anthropic are not using their position of power enough to call for greater regulation and greater concern, that in a way where it affects all of them. So
yeah, and that's concerning, because like their main the main like point that makes them like their argument for why they're good is that, okay, we need to accelerate a bit, or like we have maybe not accelerate, but we need to be at the front to have a say in regulation. Like you can't sorry, I almost broke my laptop. Anyway, yeah, you can't really go to regulators if you're not at the frontier, basically. No, they will just laugh at you. But then if you go to the frontier, like you being good is only conditioned on you actually using your voice for good,
yeah,
in that sense. And you don't think they do enough once now that they're there, basically.
well, so the thing that Esben brought up was Dario Amodei and Demis Hassabis were sitting there, and Demis Hassabis, they were being interviewed together. Demis Hassabis was saying, "Oh, we need an IAEA for AI and a bunch of other things," and like Dario Amodei could have agreed or one-upped him, or like but rather he didn't even go that high. Like, I mean, this is supposed to be the company founded by EAs, giving into the realpolitik game, right? And then, like, what the hell? Like, you're not using the slack that you do have for good, or enough good, I think. So
I see.
yeah, but in terms of like working on safety at Anthropic, people have different views on this within PauseAI. Some people just say, right, like, you, like, even if you have good intentions, you are working for a company that like is building technology that potentially kills everyone. So like
Yeah.
how about you just don't do that? Yeah.
Do you think like a pause is realistic within the time frame that, or like the percent, or like what is the percentage here? Like, is it like 5% chance that we get a pause, or and how, what needs to happen for it to actually happen?
So I mean, I think people sort of see an AI pause as like completely unprecedented, completely unrealistic, right? And I want to start by pointing out that during the height of the Cold War, Soviet Union and the US were able to sign multiple treaties regulating the use of nuclear weapons. This most essential, national security concern. Same with the Non-Proliferation Treaty. I mean, it was thought initially that nuclear weapons, all countries are going to want them because you can just deter an invasion. Like, it's like a trump card. Somehow through global diplomacy, you can just make sure that only a small handful of countries get them. I mean, we banned human cloning, the Biological Weapons Convention, the Chemical Weapons Convention, the Montreal Protocol, which every single country in the world signed, banning like ozone-destroying chemicals. I mean, each time we did these, they were unprecedented, but they did them anyway because they needed to. And, I believe, I believe pause is not unlikely, and even if it is unlikely, it's still worth going for, because if it's one of the few shots at survival, then what else are you going to do? But yes, so I mean, under the current political climate as things stand now, no, we're not going to get a pause this month or, the next few months. I do think, unfortunately, and don't get me wrong here, I definitely do not call or like hope for a Chernobyl, moment, like a warning shot. It would be terrible for everyone involved. But in terms of like pausing, we need all the political focus on this one thing. And you need the political will, and you need the risks and the costs to be very evident to everyone involved. And currently we do not have that. And so that is, I think the most likely, I think a warning shot is pretty likely to happen. And I think if that warning shot is sufficiently visible or sufficiently bad, I would definitely not rule out an AI pause, right? Like we all share a common interest in not dying. And if people, if people think that you're developing technology that might kill everyone, then yeah.
Yeah. Are we capable of doing a pause? Like, if everyone agrees to do a pause, like, do we have the I don't know, the infrastructure to actually execute on it?
Yeah, like the ones that, the means I elucidated earlier in terms of energy monitoring, like satellite imagery, chip location tracking. I mean, all those things are things like verification of compliance is something that the US and the Soviet Union did with nuclear weapons. And, these means already exist in different, scattered ways and for different concerns. But I don't believe, if there's political will on the international level, I mean, I don't think, that will be a practical hindrance. I mean, the one thing I can think of is like if you do decentralized, like underground, there may be ways of avoiding detection. But yeah.
Last question. So let's assume now it's 10 years from now, 2035, and you sit in like at the beach. It's like AI utopia. You have everything, abundance. AI didn't go rogue. We solved the alignment problem. They are working for us, not against us now. Everything is fine. You look back and reflect over the last 10 years. So from now until 2035. What is the thing that you're like the most proud of in this moment?
Well, I mean, I suppose the thing I'd be most proud of was being part of that epical moment where, we were in a really unique position to create something that will define the entire future of humanity, right? The future of life, the future of our light cone, and that we were one of the few generations that might not hand down the baton. And the decisions we made would deeply influence everyone on Earth and, potentially the lives of quadrillions upon quadrillions of future beings. I think it would be, fostering a sense of like that we're all in the face of superintelligence and in the face of extinction. We are all in the same boat. Like, I don't get if you're left wing or right wing, you're American, you're Chinese. All of our fates are currently bound together, and the stakes, it's like extinction or worse. or utopia. And the question then is like, what should we do? Should we rush into this as fast as possible? Should we make these decisions as quickly as we can? Like, does that sound reasonable? Anyway, I think the thing that I would be proud of was leading a movement to stop this suicide race and like create this really flourishing future that we can have. Yeah.
I love this question because it always gives me so much material to put like in the first section of I will cut this and take like nice quotes in the beginning, like the
Brilliant.
first minute. And this question just like always works. Now I have plenty of material. So thank you so much. That's a great way to end it. And
yeah.
thanks
and
for coming on
can
the
I
pod.
just say, PauseAI, there's a website, pauseai.org.
Right.
There's a PauseAI Discord on the website. You can find it. And if you're in Stockholm, or in Sweden, there's the PauseAI Sweden Facebook page. And feel free to reach out to me.
Cool. And I will put this in the description so you can find it easily.
Brilliant.
Right. Cool. Thank you so much for coming on. This was great.
Thank you so much, Lucas.